Welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. It's Friday, and that can only mean one thing. It is time for the Kitchen Table series to return. This is deck tech number 40, and in today's deck, we are going to look at a Golgari Wither deck. What's up, MTG BC? That is the MTG Burgeoning community. You are back here for another episode of the Kitchen Table series, and I can't believe that MTG Burgeoning's longest running series is up to deck tech number 40, the big 4-0. Wow, it's been quite a ride, folks. Well, today's deck, Golgari Wither. Let's get right down to it. As generally is customary here during the Kitchen Table series, we begin with the land base. There's not going to be too many thrills here. We have a stack of basic swamps. There's 9 of them there, if you're going to count them out. 9 basic swamps to start things off. And because we're in Golgari colors, we're going to pair those 9 swamps with 8 forests. See, you thought I was going to say 9 forests. Well, you're not right about that. 8 forests, 9 swamps. To kind of hedge the bet a little bit there with the symmetry, one of those forests is being replaced by Castle Garenbrig. Castle Garenbrig taps for a green and enters the battlefield tapped unless we control a forest. We can tap 2, tap green, and tap Castle Garenbrig and add 6 green mana to our mana pool. Mana that we can only spend to cast creature spells or activate abilities of creatures. That 1 extra mana getting a turn ahead of our opponents is going to be a big deal when we're trying to get our Wither engine up and moving. So that is 18 total lands. We've got one more play set that's going to be 4 copies of Woodland Cemetery. That's our Golgari check land. It enters the battlefield tapped unless we control a swamp or a forest, and we can turn it sideways for a black or a green mana. So that's a total of 22 lands so far in this deck. But we are not done with the mana yet. Because this is the Kitchen Table, we got 1 copy of Soul Ring because you knew it was going to be here. It's the Kitchen Table, baby, and that's what you do. You throw a Soul Ring in nearly every deck, and you just call it a day. That's card number 1. To help speed up the mana, to help speed up the spells of what we're trying to do in this deck, and because we're playing Kitchen Table Black, we're going to throw in a playset of Dark Ritual, one of the greatest instants in the history of Magic. We're going to tap a black, we're going to cast this at instant speed, and we're going to put 3 black mana into our mana pool. 4 copies of Dark Ritual. In addition to trying to speed up the mana as best we can and try to fix the mana, we're going to include a Golgari Signet or 2. And of course, the Golgari Signet, we tap 1, we tap the Signet, we add a black or a green to our mana pool. So that's 22 lands. And that's 1 Soul Ring, 2 Golgari Signets, and 4 Dark Rituals. That's nearly half the deck dedicated to our mana. So let's hope that the other half of the deck are good enough spells to warrant the justification of adding all of these mana accelerants. So we need to keep cards in our hand, and having a Skull Clamp in this deck is going to be absolutely bonkers, pivotal, integral, anything else you want to say. Skull Clamp is going to fit every one of those adjectives. It's an equipment that costs 1 to cast and 1 to equip, giving equip creature +1/-1. And whenever equip creature dies, we will draw 2 cards. As we get further along in this deck tech, you're going to see exactly the value of Skull Clamp when compared to, let's just say as a spoiler, the many different creature tokens this deck is going to create. We're going to move on to some spot removal spells now, and one of the good ones included in this deck is Putrefy. For 1 black and a green as an instant, we destroy target artifact or creature and it cannot be regenerated. 2 copies of Putrefy. Alright, so now let's start moving into the Wither part of this deck. In so doing, we are going to kind of combine the spot removal and the Wither in the form of Splendid Agony. Splendid Agony is an instant. It's 2 and a black, and we can distribute 2 -1/-1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures. 2 copies of Splendid Agony. That's going to line up real well with what we're trying to do in this deck. So let's move let's move further in with our -1/-1 synergies. And the first step in that direction is showing one playset of an enchantment called Nest of Scarabs. 2 and a black. Whenever we put one or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, create that many 1/1 black insect creature tokens. That's going to be 4 copies of Nest of Scarabs. So for the potential of synergizing with a spell like Splendid Agony, Nest of Scarabs is in play. We cast Splendid Agony. We distribute those 2 -1/-1 counters, and we make 2 1/1 black insect creature tokens. And then we can use some mana to equip a Skull Clamp, draw a couple cards, do it again, draw 4 cards. Nest of Scarabs, scary good card in a deck that wants to utilize -1/-1 counters. Another great enchantment that's going to make the use of -1/-1 counters look so much better for our benefit. We're going to play with a playset of Flourishing Defenses. This not well-known enchantment from Shadowmoor is 4 and a green and reads, if the camera will focus in, there we go. This Shadowmoor uncommon says whenever a -1/-1 counter is placed on a creature, we may put into play a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. So similar to Nest of Scarabs, whenever a -1/-1 counter is put on a creature, instead of creating a 1/1 black insect, we're creating a 1/1 elf warrior creature instead. 4 copies of Flourishing Defenses. And yes, folks, the abilities do stack. So if you have 2 Nest of Scarabs, they're going to trigger individually and give you twice the number of creature tokens. All right, next card up is going to be a beauty in this deck. 1 copy of Contagion Engine. An artifact that costs 6 from Scars of Mirrodin. When it enters the battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature target player controls. Then we can tap the Contagion Engine and proliferate twice. Can you imagine if we follow this card up if we follow up a casting of Flourishing Defenses with a Contagion Engine? Boy, oh boy, we're going to create an awful lot of tokens, and that's going to be the primary route of our victory, creating these token creatures. And our last non-creature spell that's going to create some -1/-1 counters for us, we are including Black Sun Zenith, X and 2 black. Put X -1/-1 counters on each creature, shuffle Black Sun Zenith into its owner's library. 3 copies are going into this deck, and let me explain the synergies behind this spell with respect to Nest of Scarabs and Flourishing Defenses. Even our creatures will be affected when casting Black Sun Zenith, of course, as the entire board's creatures will be. However, this being a sorcery, once it resolves, Nest of Scarabs and or Flourishing Defenses will see all of the -1/-1 counters being placed on all of the creatures. And then each of those enchantments will create the 1/1 insect creature tokens or the 1/1 elf warrior creature tokens and put them into play. So even though we're killing our own creatures, our enchantments are going to replace them. Black Sun Zenith is going to be the key cog in this Wither engine. All right, so now let's get to some of the creatures that are in this deck, because we're going to need some creatures to help enhance this Wither theme. And I can think of no better creature to include a playset of than Hepatra, Vizier of Poisons. She's a green and a black. Come on, camera, what the heck? All right, green and a black. She's a 2/2, and whenever Hepatra, Vizier of Poisons, deals combat damage to a player, we may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. And whenever we put 1 or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, we create a 1/1 green snake creature token with Death Touch. So not as powerful as Flourishing Defenses, and not as powerful as Nest of Scarabs, because this will trigger only 1 time each time there are any number of counters put onto any creatures. It's not the same as Flourishing Defenses and Nest of Scarabs. It's because those two enchantments read whenever a -1/-1 counter. Hepatra is a little bit different, but still the synergy of her being able to sneak in for some early combat damage at the kitchen table and throwing around some -1/-1 counters is definitely going to help. 4 copies of Hepatra, Vizier of Poisons. Let's put her over here to the left. All right, next play set of cards, and the last play set we're going to have in this deck, we're going to play with 4 copies of Necroskinner. 1 and 2 black. It's a 1/4 elemental with the Wither mechanic. And the Wither mechanic reads, this creature deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters. And whenever a creature an opponent controls with a -1/-1 counter on it is put into a graveyard, we return that card to play under our control. So as we're getting rid of our opponent's creatures with all of the different -1/-1 shenanigans, those creatures are coming right back into play because of Necroskinner. 4 copies of Necroskinner. All right, so now what we have left is we have a handful of creatures that are going to help to further enhance and strengthen this Wither theme and do some other fun things as well. So let's start with 4 one-ofs. The first one being a copy of Maran of Clan Naltoth. 2, a black and a green, and whenever another creature we control dies, we'll get an experience counter. At the beginning of our end step, we choose a target creature card in our graveyard. If that card's converted mana cost is less than or equal to the number of experience counters we have, we return it to the battlefield. Otherwise, we put it into our hand. With such a high number of token creatures that we're going to be creating that are going to die, having Maran in play and allowing us to gain those experience counters, we're going to be able to return any creature from our graveyard right back into play at the beginning of every one of our turns. 1 copy of Maran of Clan Naltoth. Because of the number of cards that we can expect to see hitting the graveyards of our opponents and ours as well, including 1 copy of Lord of Extinction seems like a reasonable fit. 3 black and a green, its power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in all graveyards. Unfortunately, without evasion, this guy could get chump blocked till the cows come home. However, with all of the spells that we have putting -1/-1 counters on creatures on our opponent's creatures, Lord of Extinction will not be held down for long. Our next one-of is going to be a copy of Vulturous Zombie. 3 black and a green, it's a 3/3 flyer, and whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, put a +1/+1 counter on Vulturous Zombie. Again, with all of the creature cards that we can expect going from the battlefield to our opponent's graveyards, Vulturous Zombie can get to become quite a game-ending threat because of the number of +1/+1 counters that will be put on it. The next card to be included is a nice outside-the-box card specifically for this type of deck where we're throwing around -1/-1 counters, and that's going to be 1 copy of Coolwrath Knight. Returning back to Shadowmoor, this 3/3 Elemental Knight has flying and the Wither mechanic, and reads, creatures our opponents control with counters on them can't attack or block. So with Coolwrath Knight in play, as long as our creatures have any kind of counters, and they don't even have to be the ones that we put on them, we could be sitting across from an opponent that's playing a +1/+1 counter deck. Guess what? Coolwrath Knight says your creatures are useless. 1 copy of that is a nice surprise. And it always works out well when the Coolwrath Knight hits the battlefield. And the last 2 cards to be included are great synergies with Maran of Clan Naltoth's experience counters, and those are 2 copies, there we go, of Runescar Demon. 5 and 2 black, it's a 6/6 flyer. When it ETBs, we Demonic Tutor. Can you imagine having the ability of getting the Runescar Demon from our graveyard with experience counters every single turn? It's only a matter of time until we win that game. 2 copies of Runescar Demon. And that's it, MTG Burgeoning Community. This is the Kitchen Table Series, deck number 40. Boy, it's been quite a roller coaster ride with the MTG Burgeoning Kitchen Table Series, baby. It really, really has. Number 40. All right, folks, this is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.